What is up, you guys? We are talking Bellator 290. One of the true GOATs of the fight game, Fedor Emelianenko, will be fighting for the last time. Now he gets an opportunity to snag the Bellator Heavyweight Championship of the world as he makes his departure. This fight card, in my opinion, is an absolute can't miss as far as Bellator goes. A very stacked card, a lot of recognizable names from the Bellator scene. Johnny Eblin, one of the more underrated fighters in the fight game right now, proving to be one of the best middleweight fighters on planet Earth. Sabah Hamasi and Brennan Ward is an absolute fun fight. Two guys that throw down, two recognizable names, staples of Bellator. Of course, Sabah Hamasi, also coming from the Ultimate Fighter, fought in the UFC, went 0-3. Lorenz Larkin, former Strikeforce and UFC fighter. I mean, it really is a stacked card. I mean, you got young prospects still grooming their way through the fight game, and Chris Gonzalez and Max Rostkopf. You guys are familiar with him, the fighter that has a very decorated grappling pedigree. Dropped his fight in the UFC, quit on the stool. You guys remember that whole controversy. Just, it's an exciting card. I mean, when you see a fighter like Caldwell fighting this early on the fight card, you know it's a stacked Bellator event, because Bellator has really put Caldwell towards the top of many cards. So we have these three fights to kick things off. Very young professional fighters that really haven't made a huge splash as of now. So we'll keep an eye on these fights. Jalen Bates undefeated. But the first fight I'm going to be talking about here is Caldwell versus Nikita Makhaev. Caldwell on a 3-fight losing skid. We know Caldwell, the Wolf fighter that at one point in time was fighting at the pinnacle of the division in Bellator. Like I said, now at the bottom of the card here, losses to AJ McKee Jr., Leandro Higo, and Enrique Barzola. If you actually take a look into those three losses, you understand that those are, without a doubt, three of the best fighters fighting in Bellator, period. Not even just by weight division, but point blank, period. Those are three fighters that have been really doing it. And you guys know Barzola has came over from the UFC and has just been on an absolute tear in Bellator. Oh, take a look. Barzola was actually the last man to defeat Nikita Makhaev. What do you know here? Something you definitely want to note is that Caldwell is 35 years old, while Makhaev is 24. Makhaev, the much younger fighter. Caldwell, a good athlete. He's been working on his striking for years. Really does rely on his wrestling, in my opinion. I mean, he'll throw some nice kicks out there and whatnot. Has decent boxing, but does like to take advantage of an opponent that's lacking with the grappling. He could definitely use his wrestling there. I'm not going to say that I've ever been really over impressed with his striking. He may have a slight edge on the feet in this fight if it stays there, but I have a feeling that this fight is going to be a very grueling match, and I see these guys closing the distance and really fighting in the clinch, and just seeing who kind of prevails in those grappling type exchanges. When I watch film on Nikita, he has no problem getting messy down there, scrambling like crazy. A fight that was impressive to me, as you see him over here brushing shoulders with some of the GOATs in the game right now, Petr Yan, Muhammad Makhaev, over there in Thailand at Tiger Muay Thai. So just know that both these men are training with some of the best in the world. But Nikita Makhaev, in his fight, I just want to pull up this one fight and then we'll slide over to the next fight. But Nikita Makhaev, although he did drop his last fight, a fight that does stand out to me was a very grueling fight. You could pull this up on YouTube against Magomedov, who was undefeated. He was 13-0 at the time. You could pull that fight up on YouTube here, search him up, and you'll see that fight there. But that was a fight that was just straight up a grueling grappling type of fight. Just both men just going at it, a lot of reversals and all types of stuff. And at the end of the day, he did prevail there. And I have a feeling this fight may play out similarly to that. I like the youth of Nikita there and all that. So, Nikita, let's go take a look at the betting odds. Let's pull this up on bovada.lv. Nikita is going to be the favorite in this matchup here. He's going to be a -165 currently against Caldwell, with the comeback in Caldwell +125. I think that the Nikita line was higher at one point in time as well, so a little bit of action coming back on Caldwell. I think this fight has the potential to play out pretty close here, but I am going to edge the younger Nikita, who's going to be really hungry right now, coming off that loss against Barzola. I know Caldwell's hungry as well, but a little bit older, and I just think that Nikita will be a little bit quicker to the transitions there. That's why I am taking him to win that fight there. And I'll say that maybe it values Caldwell there at dog odds. You know, that's a tough one to choose. I'm not really crazy about Nikita with that line being too high towards anywhere towards the -200 line, 2-1 favorite. I'm not crazy about that. Diana Avsaragova, who's 5-0, taking on Alejandra Lara. That should be a fun fight to check out there. It should be a very close fight. Haven't been necessarily super impressed with either of these women, but you know, they're tough girls, and I have a feeling that they'll both clash, and it'll be a fun fight there. Grant Neal taking on Carl Albrektsson. If you remember Carl Albrektsson, this is a fighter that was very hyped up at one point in time. Had some victories over some big names in the game. Victory over the Bellator champion Vadim Nemkov. You know, battled in there with some big time names. The losses coming by way of recognizable names like Valentin Meldovsky, Yuri Prohaska, Phil Davis. I mean, we're talking about upper echelon type fighters. Now, in his last fight, that's where we kind of question him a little bit here. I mean, Carl Moore, obviously a good fighter, was able to pull that sub off, but you know, that was a fight that Carl really needed to show up in and continue the win streak going to really start making a name. I think that he's going to rebound here. I do think that he's going to rebound here. Grant Neal, an athletic fighter, a well-rounded fighter. I'm not sure if Albrektson's going to be able to just use his grappling to just snatch this fight up easily. Grant Neal is shown to be a pretty talented dude, but I'm gonna take Carl for the comeback here, and we'll pull up that betting line as well before we take a look at the main card and go a little bit more in depth into those fights. I just wanted to brush over these fights real quick for you guys. Albrektsson is a -150 right now with the comeback on Neal +115. You know, that's a line you also want to be careful about if that line gets too high on Carl's side. I mean, that was a little bit of a disappointing performance in his last fight, and Grant Neal looking like he does possess some skills. So, I mean, it's not really a line that stands out to me at -150 personally. Be careful for a dog to bite there, but we'll give Albrektsson the benefit of the doubt to make a comeback here and get back in the win column. All right, now we're going to be talking about all these fights a little bit more in depth. I'm pumped for these fights here. We got Max Rostkopf taking on Chris Gonzalez. You guys remember Max. Max is the fighter that trains under Robert Drysdale. He has the wrestling pedigree. I believe he was a Division I wrestler. He was very involved, or he has been very involved in the no-gi grappling scene. He's a fighter that came in as a favorite in his UFC debut against Austin Hubbard. He was expected to go in there and handle business, and if you remember, he got broke in that fight. That was a fight where he pushed an early pace, tried to resort to his grappling, tried to get the fight down to the mat, and he struggled a little bit and ended up blowing his load. He got gassed out. And he got tagged up with some shots, and he ended up quitting on the stool. If you remember that, Robert Drysdale, I believe it was the coach, one of the best jiu-jitsu players in the game these days, or you know, for a long time now. If you're not familiar with Robert Drysdale, a fighter that unfortunately never really gained a lot of traction as an MMA fighter. He did have a couple fights and whatnot, and did pop for a drug test as well. So I mean, but whatever. Drysdale was trying to keep Max in the fight. He felt that he could have bounced back in that second round, and he unfortunately quit on the stool. So if you remember, Dana White was saying Max isn't a real fighter. They wanted nothing to do with him after that fight, obviously. Since that fight, he's on a 2-fight winning streak. Went out there, finished Jeff Creighton. You could pull that fight up online. He actually absolutely beat him down, kind of flattened him out, and was just going to work and putting it on him. And then again, another victory in his second fight there against Jordan Bailey. Both those fights over in Cage Warriors. A little bit of a lower level fighters there. You know, Max was able to be the hammer on those fights, right? And he was able to put in that work. But what happens when he's the nail? We kind of saw that already, right? When Max is the nail, he doesn't like it at all. He quits on the stool. Chris Gonzalez, on the other hand, you know, the same amount of pro experience basically, but Chris Gonzalez, you know, he doesn't have that major question mark surrounding him, in my opinion. You know, that's the thing. Chris Gonzalez, a solid athlete, good wrestling pedigree as well. He's been training with Uriah Faber and Team Alpha Male for a long time. So, you would hope that Chris Gonzalez can keep this fight on the feet and be the better striker here and kind of bully Max and take that will out of him. But if he does slack with his takedown defense and he lets Max get to his world, I could see the possibility that Chris runs into some trouble. But I want to see Chris keep this fight on the feet, use the striking similarly to what we saw in the Sada Wad fight where he caught him with a beautiful head kick. Sada Wad, always a dangerous fighter, a long-time Bellator fighter. Chris Gonzalez, 31 years old. You take a look at the two losses that he just had against Gyori Yamaguchi and Usman Nurmagomedov. You're talking about two stud fighters, okay? So, as I like to say, let's not put him under the magnifying glass. Let's give him another chance here. I think that he proves to be the better mixed martial artist in this fight. And again, he has to stuff those takedowns, keep this fight on the feet, and I think that he could definitely take the will out of Max. And as you see Max over here, over there with Eric, hitting the pads with Francis Ngannou. So yeah, that's cool that he's getting that type of attention and surrounding himself with those types of people. But I kind of seen where he's at mentally, man. It's kind of hard to forget what he did in that fight. And again, I'm not just some dude sitting behind a keyboard that's like, oh yeah, he quit on the stool. I mean, I'm just, our job here is to really be to be analytical about these guys, or maybe that's not the right term, just to really analyze the performances that we see from these guys and put them to the fire. And if we see an MMA fighter quit, we're holding them to a higher standard, right? Because they're in the fight game. They're fighting the best guys in the world. They're fighting some of the most toughest warriors on planet Earth. So yeah, I am going to put him to the fire for quitting on the stool. In real life, yeah, I mean, he's a very tough guy. He's a lot tougher compared to the rest of the people walking around the streets. But compared to other guys that get locked into a cage and throw down and that have severe willpower, Chris Gonzalez, I'm going to edge him here. He's a minus 210. He's a stud athlete. And how do I feel about that line? I think that I'm not crazy about that line. Again, we talked about the ability that Max does have down on the mat, surrounds himself with good people. If he's able to really have success with his wrestling and get it down to his world, yes, I could see him having some success. Maybe he snatches up some type of sub, some type of front head choke or something like that in a scramble position. There's that possibility for sure. Max has a solid pedigree, but I'm going to say there's more value on the minus 210 line. That's a little tough there. I would like that line more towards minus 190, 185 if I was going to personally bet it, but I'm still going to say more value in the minus 210 line because I think Chris gets the job done here. I have that feeling if you guys catch my drift. But understand at the same time, Max is a talented dude. So when you see a plus 160 line next to his name, it makes it a little bit harder, but we'll side with Chris there. All right, in the next fight, we got Steve Mowry taking on Ali Azayov, the 9-0 undefeated fighter coming over from the PFL scene. Has been putting some work in over there. His last fight was one of the more impressive victories I've seen on his resume. Jared Rosholt, former Division I wrestler, a stud wrestler, believe wrestling out of Oklahoma State, if I remember correctly, former UFC fighter, battled it out with Derek Lewis back in the regional scene a long time ago. That's a big win there. I know that Rosholt's had some ups and downs, but still, I like that victory. His victory over Denis Goltsov also able to finish that fight. Ali Azayov, let's mention the fact that he is 39 years old. He moves around in the cage a little bit labored. He's a big dude. He looks like a redwood tree out there. He's very thick, and although he has a decent wrestling pedigree, he's a fighter that has some good offensive wrestling. He can definitely shoot in and get a takedown. I've seen him reversed quite a bit throughout his fights, and that's one thing that I think is very disappointing. I mean, I've seen him solidify control and just literally be reversed and flipped over to his back, that just kind of worries me a little bit, because in some of those positions you would like to see him really just be able to control his opponent, and he's slacked a little bit in some specific spots. Now, he has also redeemed himself in those same fights by coming back and either finishing the fight or coming back and solidifying that position. But I do question it a little bit. Steve Mowry, he's a fighter that has shown a decent ground game. He's 10-0. He's a big boy. He's 30 years old. He's 6'8", and he's coming off that no contest against Valentin Moldavsky. That fight was stopped very early. Now, I know that fight didn't take place for that long, but I kind of didn't like the way he looked in there. And if you really want to dive into some of his fight tape. He's a fighter that is lacking defensively in the striking department. His head is there to be hit. I mean, he kind of statues up a little bit at times, if you guys know what I'm saying. He kind of freezes, and as his opponent makes his move, he's kind of a step behind, and he kind of analyzes it, and then he'll look to counter, but he's like a second behind. And with the size that he has, the power, and some of those natural gifts, he kind of gets away with it, right? There was a couple of times I'm breaking down footage on him. I'm like, oh, if his opponent was just a little bit more accurate, he'd be in trouble. But, you know, as the fighter would miss a wide open shot, then he would kind of react and then take the fight down to the mat or land a couple big shots. You know, I think that he's a physically imposing fighter. He's decently technical, but yes, he is slow. But luckily for him, his opponent is pretty slow as well, although he does carry power. I think that if either one of these men land a big shot, there's definitely a possibility for somebody to be wobbled and to fall back and be finished. I am actually going to take Steve Mowry. I'm going to take Steve Mowry in this spot here. I'm going to say that he rebounds a little bit. I like the youth that he has going on, and I like the fact that he's been putting in work with some of my favorite coaches in the game. You know, I know Henry Hooft. You see Henry here, one of the better striking coaches to have ever done it, one of the better strikers to have ever done it, putting in work with Steve for some time. I'm going to say that Steve continues to progress and look good here, and even if he gets taken down, he could reverse or work his way back up to the feet, make this an ugly fight, and land some big shots. So yeah, we'll take big boy Steve, and you got to love Steve's handle here. Look at his handle. If you guys didn't catch it, tall Steve fights people. You know, he's right to the point. I like that. All right, so let's take a look at Bovada.lv, where Steve Mowry will be a -135. Ali is a +105. Now, that line has moved around a little bit because at one point in time, Ali, I believe, was the favorite here. So, you know, some action coming in on Steve. That should be a fun fight. Got the big boys throwing down, and let's see if Steve can kind of get the train back in the tracks. I know his last fight was a no contest, but didn't look that great. Got poked in the eye, and I don't know, it was a little bit of a weird fight there. All right, let's see what we got next. Let's see what fight we're going to be talking about next here as we scroll through Bellator 290. Next, we got Henry Corrales taking on Ahmed Magomedov. First and foremost, big respect to Henry Corrales. You know, when I think of the Bellator promotion, Henry Corrales is a name that stands out. Now, I know he hasn't had the most decorated career over there. He's had some big wins. He's had some tough losses, you know, some losing skids and whatnot. But he's a fighter that's been over there in Bellator for almost a decade at this point in time. He's 36 years old. He's had some good victories. I mean, the knockout over Aaron Pico, of course, was a big time victory. Georgie Karikanian was a big victory. Brandon Gertz, as of recently, took out Aiden Lee, and Noah Lahat, Cody Bollinger, some other recognizable names. You take a look at the losses that he's had. I mean, against very respectable talent, right? Daniel Strauss, Emmanuel Sanchez, Patricio Pitbull, Darian Caldwell, Juan Archuleta. But the fight that stands out to me a little bit is the loss that he had recently against Johnny Campbell. And I'll tell you why. You know, he got caught in that rear naked choke, but was out grappled in that fight. And although he was able to bounce back with 2 victories, he's 36 years old. He's getting thrown to the wolves a little bit here, in my opinion, taking on the 26-year-old Dagestani phenom, undefeated 10-0, a fighter that really pushes the pace with the grappling and will look to submit his opponent. And I have a feeling that he might catch Corrales in the sub here. He's really going to push his will on Corrales, just close the distance, really put it on him. And although Corrales is extremely tough, I think that he might get put in a position where he just kind of leans into it and just kind of gets finished. Maybe a rear naked choke, some type of sub. I was pretty impressed from what I've seen on tape from Magomedov. He's very physically imposing. You know, he's a very physically strong guy, and I think that when he locks horns with Corrales, even though Corrales is not a pushover there, I think that he will be a little bit outmatched. That's how I feel about it when I look at the tape. Again, big Corrales fan, but can't pick him here. Ahmed Magomedov is a -550 over on Bovada.lv. He's a big time favorite. You know, and again, it's just one of those lines, man, where you know, it's hard to even sit here and be like, oh yeah, there's more value here or more value there, because they're hitting these lines pretty accurately. I mean, I expected Ahmed to be a pretty big favorite, right around -500 or so. So, I mean, if you want to say there's more value in the +350 in Corrales, you could say that if you want, and maybe, you know, he can go out there, keep this fight standing, and use his striking to land a big shot. But I don't see that happening. I see Ahmed pushing the pace, smothering Corrales, and pulling off that sub. So that's the route I'm going there. So I guess we got to say there's more value on that Magomedov line. If you're going to do something with that, you're going to parlay it, or you look for a prop finish. Maybe you look for a submission prop or inside the distance on Ahmed. That's kind of how I'm looking at that fight personally. If I were to be looking at that from a betting perspective. Lorenz, the Monsoon, Larkin taking on Makhaev, Berkhamov. Another fight where you got these top of the line Russians coming over, younger, more in the primes of their career, or more youthful and cruising into the primes of their career, fighting another recognizable name from the North American side of things, right? A respectable name in Lorenz Larkin. Now, this is a rematch. If you guys remember, this fight was ruled a no contest, right? After Lorenz was throwing those illegal elbows as he was against the fence and Makhaev was going for the takedown. Lorenz Larkin, now 36 years old. You guys all know the fight that everybody always wants to talk about, and that was his victory against Neil Magny, where he looked like an absolute stud, got that finish on Neil Magny. There's been a couple fights where he's went out there and he's really looked good back in the day and just styled on some of his opponents. Took a victory against Jorge Masvidal back in the day. Finish against Santiago Ponzinibbio. But yes, the fight against Neil Magny, I believe, was the fight where he really picked him apart, and people always want to point to that victory there. A close victory over Andrei Koreshkov over on the Bellator side of things. He is now on a, let's see here, again, if you want to count the last fight as a no contest, which, yeah, that's all you could do really. But he was on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fight winning streak going into this matchup. If you go up on YouTube, you can pull up some fight tape on Magomedov Berkhamov as well. His victory over Jaleel Willis. Bellator was nice enough to throw that up there, and you could see the kind of pace that he pushes with his grappling. He really likes to close the distance and put it on his opponents, look for that sub and whatnot. Here was the matchup of the two men the last time when Larkin was pressed against the cage and threw that elbow down. He definitely threw that elbow straight down to the back of the head. And Magomedov was not able to continue, so it was what it was, but he was closing the distance. And as you see, he is going to be coming in as a good favorite here, in the rematch. And I think people are expecting Berkhamov to close the distance once again, use his grappling, and then that's kind of what I'm expecting as well. Let's go take a look at the live line right now. He is a minus 230 on Bovada.lv. And Lorenz Larkin, I'll give Lorenz Larkin the striking edge. He has to be able to keep this fight at bay. He's very, very talented there. Those beautiful leg kicks, can do a lot of work on the feet. He can mix things up. But at the end of the day, this is just one of those fights where I see the Russian closing the distance, getting a hold of Larkin, just grueling, making it a grueling match where he takes advantage of Larkin there and controls him, gets the fight down to the mat, and takes the fight. Minus 230 line. Again, it's one of those same type of betting lines where it's like you kind of got to point towards Berkhamov's way. But do you respect the plus 175 on Larkin here? Larkin could land something big. He's going to need to. Looks like he's in good shape for this fight. You see him putting that work in, but I just don't really see it happening, to be quite honest. I think that he's going to get smothered a bit, and I will take Berkhamov to get the job done in the rematch. All right, so with that being said, we'll slide over to Neiman Gracie versus Dante Shiro. Neiman Gracie, of course, coming from that Gracie family tree. He's only won one of his last 4 fights. Lost to Giodi Yamaguchi. That was a fight where he was the favorite, and he dropped the ball there. Got finished by Giodi. Before that, lost to Logan Storley. You guys know I've interviewed Storley. I feel that Storley is without a doubt one of the more underrated fighters in the fight game. He's just a beast, a legit American wrestler. Before that, he had the knockout finish over Mark Lemminger. Not the most impressive opponent there. And then I lost to Jason Jackson. We know Jason Jackson has been doing his thing, a very, very talented fighter. And then before that, he caught John Fitch in a heel hook. This is a perfect bounce back spot for Neiman Gracie. I think that's a little bit of a setup fight. Dante Shiro coming off a loss where he was just submitted by Luko Paklit over in Bellator 3 months ago. I think that Neiman Gracie's going to go out there and he's going to pull off a sub in this fight. I mean, that's what I see. Now, Neiman Gracie, obviously not the most impressive on the feet. He's been working on things. He's decently technical, but he's kind of slow. I mean, we've seen him get a knockout victory there, but still, at the end of the day, he's not overly impressive there. But guess what? I'm not that impressed with what I've seen from Dante as well. As you see Dante hitting the pads here. But I'm going to say if Dante is going to try to take this fight, if he's gonna have a chance to take this fight, he's gonna have to land something wild. So he better go out there, be based and whatnot. You obviously don't want to get taken down where you're gonna get subbed, but you need to go out there and you need to throw a wrench at Neiman Gracie and wobble him and hurt him, where then maybe you catch him with the sub, if he's out on his feet wobbling around, or you get that knockout. Because other than that, I think Neiman's gonna take that fight, and Neiman Gracie will be another big favorite on this Bellator fight card. I'm sure of that. He's a minus 300 against Dante. I'll say I'll say more value on that favorite line still, because I think Neiman will be a step above, and you might want to analyze a submission prop or inside the distance on Neiman Gracie in that spot there. Sabah Hamasi taking on Brennan Ward. Brennan Ward, I'm so happy to have him back to the fight game, because if you remember, he did disappear for a bit, and I believe he was struggling with some type of addiction. So, again, he had from his third fight back, that was 5 years and 5 months ago. From that fight to his comeback fight, we're talking about, it was about a year there. So, we're talking about a 4.5 year layoff he had going into that Brandon Bell fight. Got the knockout once again, showing what he's about. He's always possessed and showed good power, good striking. And his last fight had another knockout over Cassius Kane. Got the knockout there as well. Now, the Sabah Hamasi fight, without a doubt, it's a step up in competition. Sabah Hamasi, I've always thrown around this story, man. Sabah Hamasi, it's funny, way back in the day, in my youth, as I came down from college back to my my hometown, South Florida and whatnot, was always in the club scene and in the bar scene. That's kind of where I surrounded myself, unfortunately. But I met Saba's sister one time in a club in South Florida. I had a great night, and I remember her telling me about her brother Sabah Hamasi, and that he was an MMA fighter. And this is way back in the day. This was right around when he had his first Bellator fight back in the day, which he had a Bellator fight before he ever fought in the Ultimate Fighter and all that. I do believe so. And it was funny because I remember the weekend it was leading up to the fight, and she was mentioning that to me and whatnot. And so Sabah, Sabah, a guy that was, I think he was working at a male strip club a little bit later too, and I used to see him around the bar scene. He was a wild dude. I seen him, right around American Top Team at some local bars. Used to see him bust through the door, making a scene. You're sitting at the bar, the type of guy that everyone's looking back, taking a look at, making a scene, walking in. He is without a doubt that type of dude, from what I've seen in person. So fun dude, cool. What seems like a cool guy. He's a warrior. He's been training at Top Team for a long time now, and he's been putting it together. Sabah Hamasi, let's take a look at the work he's been putting in right now, because I do think that the 17-10 record's not really indicative exactly of who he is. As of recently, 2 finishes in a row, had the finish over Jaleel Willis as well. We just talked about him. The loss to Andrei Koreshkov, one of the more underrated, one of the top fighters in the game. The loss to Paul Daly in a war. Paul Daly, better put some respect on his name. And then victories over an aged Bobby Volker, Curtis Melander, victories over Makai Terrell, Muhammad Abdullah. And then you go back to his UFC stint where he went 0-3 against Tim Means, and the 2 knockout losses against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Controversial stoppage the first time around. Sabah's just been looking good. Again, looked good early against Paul Daly. This is a tough fight for me. Both been 34 years old. Both have a 71-inch reach. Sabah a little bit taller. I'm going to be honest. I might be a little bit biased here if I pick Brennan Ward, because I'm a big Brennan Ward fan. He's actually, from way back in the day, we talked about watching Bellator from the early days. Brennan Ward was one of my favorite fighters. Brennan Irish Ward, when he was young, had the wrestling pedigree, but just would go out there and knock dudes out. I was very disappointed when Paul Daly finished him. I was rooting for him. That was his big fight there. I felt like Brennan Ward, if he would have played his cards right, could have been a name in the game, if you guys catch my drift. I really do. I think that he could have came to the UFC, could have made some noise. He had a funny personality, or he has a fun personality. He's a tough dude. He's a wild dude, has the chipped tooth. He's just a wild dude. And, I think if he would have stayed away from, I hope I'm not speaking out of terms, I do believe he had some type of addiction. If he would have stayed away from all that, maybe caught a UFC contract and stayed disciplined to the game, I think he's a fighter that could have made some noise. But I digress. Hamasi's look good. You know, he's been a little bit more professional over the last 5 years. I got to go with Sabah Hamasi to get the job done, but I'm rooting for Brennan Ward, and I think that Brennan Ward is very live to land a big shot and shake this fight up. Brennan Ward is going to be the dog here. Pretty sure of that. So Brennan Ward, plus 160 dog, Sabah Hamasi at minus 210. I'm going to say there's more value on Brennan Ward at plus 160. I think if you were looking to bet this fight, I think you would be aiming at taking the dog shot on Brennan Ward. It's a little risky. Like I said, he hasn't been that active, and this is a step up in competition since he's made his return stint, and he's kind of dropped the ball in those big type of fights. And I think this is another big fight here he's had a resume of dropping those types of fights, and I think Sabah's probably going to show up and just be a step ahead, a little bit more technical with the striking, just mixing things up, and I think Sabah Hamasi takes the fight. Sabah, tell your sister I said what's up. All right, so, and now we go to the next fight where we got the co-main event, Johnny Eblin taking on Anatoly Tokov. Johnny Eblin, we definitely got to start by talking about Johnny Ebs, the human cheat code, a specimen, a very physically imposing fighter, has been putting in work at American Top Team, has the wrestling background, but his striking's been coming around as well, throws heavy leg kicks, has good power in his hands. Johnny Eblin, in my opinion, has been one of the more pleasant surprises in the game, as you see him over here with a fighter that I have a lot of respect for, and I think is one of the more underrated fighters in the game. Yaroslav Amasov, the Bellator champ. Of course, he stepped away for a little bit, but putting in work with fighters like that. And again, that's just one of the many fighters that that he trains with on a regular basis over at American Top Team. You see Mike Brown shoulder to shoulder with him, and again you see Amasov there. Listen, Eblin has to continue to sharpen up his striking, fight to fight, just keep sharpening that up. He has that wrestling background, that wrestling pedigree. We've seen him control fights with that. Coming off the biggest victory of his career, without a doubt, a victory over Gegard Mousasi 6 months ago. Looked phenomenal in that fight. People were questioning how he was going to look with the difference of experience going to that matchup. He showed up. Once again, he has a fighter in front of him that has much more experience, 34 pro fights compared to his 12. 32 years old. He's not even age either. Tokov is pretty much in the prime of his career. He's a tough fighter. Coming off a knockout victory over Muhammad Abdullah. We just talked about him a little bit ago. We've seen that he has a knack for finishing fights, had that submission choke over Gerald the Hurricane Harris, victory over Alexander Shlemenko. Tokov is a well-rounded fighter, a dangerous fighter. You see him over here with Nemkov, part of a serious fight team, surrounds himself with some of the best fighters from that side of the world. But I ain't picking against Eblin right now. I'm just not doing that. I've been very impressed with what I've seen from Eblin. I think that Eblin will just will be the bully out here. It might play out somewhat closely, but I think at the end of the day that Eblin will be the fighter that pushes forward and it's the bully. He's impressed me. He's an absolute bull. I think that his nickname should be the Bull, Johnny the Bull Eblin. If you guys are willing to sign that petition, let me know. If we get enough people on board, I'm going to try to get that over to him, but needs to change the nickname to the Bull. And the current Bellator champion, I will be siding with Eblin there. And Eblin is a minus 285 favorite to come back on Tokov at plus 210. Eblin's getting that type of respect these days. That's a high line against a serious opponent. If Eblin can go out there and get a nice victory here, continues to paint the picture of him being one of the best middleweights in the world. And real quick, let's see how he's looking on these Tapology worldwide rankings. He is currently ranked, I think this is disrespectful, currently ranked the 29th middleweight fighter in the world, and I think that is disrespectful because he's behind Gegard, who he just defeated. I know for a fact that he's taken out certain guys that are ranked above him right now, and I understand these fighters are fighting over in the UFC. It is what it is, but nah. All right, he takes out Buckley. I'm not really crazy about seeing him behind some of these guys. Edmund Shabazian, how do you think that fight's going to go? All right, come on, think about that now. Edmund, a guy that's had issues with wrestlers and guys that can control him and bully him down there. Darren Till, stop it. All right. It's disrespectful in my opinion there, so I'm not crazy about where they have Eblin ranked. I like Eblin to get the job done here and he continues to gain some respect to all the haters out there. All right, so who's doing those Tapology worldwide rankings? They're usually pretty accurate. They're just not giving him respect because he's not fighting in the UFC. And then we slide over to the main event. Fedor, Emelianenko taking on Ryan Bader. We know how this fight went the last time they threw down with Ryan Bader getting the knockout finish. Let's take a look how long ago that fight was. That was back in 2019, 4 years later. It's just a more aged Fedor, an older Fedor. He was finished in the first round last time. Bader was really on a tear around that time. He was going out there starching guys. Had the knockout over Linton Vassell, King Mo, victory over Matt Mitrione, Phil Davis. He was looking really good around that time. Since then, finished by Vadim Nemkov, and then he got finished by Corey Anderson. So kind of showing a knack of being finished a little bit as of recently. And, we've seen Bader finish before. You remember Glover Teixeira caught him with that counter shot way back in the day. He is 39 years old now. Definitely something that you want to note here. If Fedor can land one of those big, heavy looping shots, don't be surprised if you see Bader crumble. We've seen that before, but I am not expecting that. I'm expecting Bader just to be just quicker, the same way he was last time, just a little bit more youthful, under that 40 mark. Well, Fedor is 46 years old, almost 46 and a half here. I just can't pick Fedor. The knockout over Tim Johnson, he hasn't fought, since about a year and 3 months ago. Before that, 3 years ago, he took out Rampage Jackson. And Rampage Jackson just had a recent interview where he mentioned that fight. And almost, I'll tell you what, you want to talk about fixed fights. When I saw that fight happen, I said that looked really, really sketchy. And even the way Rampage just talked about that fight, how he said he'll never fight in Bellator again because of the way that he fought against Fedor, almost admitting it was like comical. And I think he kind of, whatever. And then before that, he got knocked out by Bader. And I think we're going to see another L here. Got to side with Ryan Bader here. A freak athlete, has the wrestling background, has the power. I think that he'll be a step ahead of Fedor and he'll land a big shot here. I think we're going to see a war. Fedor is such a G. He'll come out there and he'll look to throw heavy leather. And I just think that he's going to get clipped. And you see him with one of his proteges in Nemkov. Unfortunately, Nemkov had to pull out of this fight card, right? He was injured. So, rocking the faded Dumb and Dumber haircut. Gotta respect it. The high fade with the Dumb and Dumber in the front. Some people like that cut. I used to rock that cut for a long time when I was in, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade. Right around then, just finally started growing it out, slicking it back a little bit. But you gotta, respect a grown man that's still rocking the Dumb and Dumber fade. No disrespect, because I know there's a lot of you guys that are rocking that. It looks good on some of you guys. All right, so you see Nemkov, slinging that $1 million check there. Ooh, that's got to be painful for old boy Corey there. But it is what it is. And what's going on with that? How am I not following Vadim there? All right, so yeah, I'm going to be picking Bader. And we take a look at the betting line. Bader's a big-time favorite, -385. That's a high line in a dangerous fight where two heavyweights are going to be slinging. Fedor's retirement fight. You don't know if they put a word in, to the judges. You got to be careful there. I think that will favor the Fedor line, personally. I don't know. I'm not really crazy, but almost -400 line on Bader, who's been a little bit prone to being hurt and tagged in Fedor's retirement fight. But you got to side with Bader getting the job done there. We sit back, we root for Fedor, and maybe he pulls off a major upset. All right, guys, thank you to all of you that stuck around all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this Bellator breakdown. I don't always get these Bellator breakdown videos out to you guys, but when there's a card like this, I definitely will, and I'll try to step it up even more so you guys know that as you see the upgrades with the channel here. Go check me out on Instagram. You got all types of cool graphics and posts coming from the teller like this. MMA Fortune Teller _. I'm on Twitter at the MMA Teller. You can catch all that stuff there as well. And please like this video, subscribe if you guys haven't already. Hope you guys are all doing great out there. If you guys are interested in my official plays, you guys know you can reach out to me. And if you're looking to sign up to bovada.lv, I can send you my referral link and I can give you guys some free bets and you'll get an added bonus to your account as well. So you guys know that offer is always there for you guys. All right. I appreciate you guys for stopping by. Signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA Fortune Teller. Yeah.
The MMA Fortune Teller.
The teller.